Go, Brandon!
Hey friends, a lot of you are reaching out asking me if the New York law that was struck down is going to affect people in other states, more specifically those in the states that are very similar to New York that have may issue type states where you have to prove your status to be able to carry a firearm legally on your person concealed out in public. Well, there are a few other states, California, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, and New Jersey, that I can think of off the top of my head that still have these same type of restrictions. And those states are likely to move pretty quick to try to get some kind of a new law put in place in order to do that. Now, specifically on New York, let's talk about it for one quick second before we talk about these other states. That particular law is not yet off the books in New York. The case is going to be sent back to a lower court, the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, which is expected to send it back to federal district court in New York. That court is more than likely going to give officials in New York a grace period where they can kind of develop additional laws without striking it down immediately. In other words, there'll probably be a time frame. In other words, this coming Monday is not going to, the strike down doesn't go into effect. There will more likely be a grace period once all this exchanges. Now, the thing that we have to look at is the portion of it where you have to beg for your permission to protect yourself. That's going away. Whether New Yorkers, people in Maryland, California, Massachusetts, New Jersey, whether they like it or not, that is going away. Now, what you can likely find is two different things that they're probably going to find to skirt around this particular type of law. One is the requirements. You still have to have requirements per this same ruling. I think Kavanaugh might have been the one that solidified that, unfortunately. But you still are going to have to qualify with a background check. In most cases, in most states, you already have to do that. And I think most people are kind of okay with that. But I think it's more along the lines of course, you're going to have fingerprinting too. That will be a portion of it. But more in line with the training side of it is what I'm concerned with. They can require a crazy amount of training to be involved that most people are just not going to bother with or may not even be able to afford because they may, this is my hunch, is that you may see these states now take citizens' money, taxpayer money for those particular states, bribe training facilities to not only bump up the price of training, but to bump it so high that most people just can't afford it. So then it's not on the state charging too much for the permit. It's going to be the required training that's approved by the state now will cost way too much, and that's going to be administered by private individuals who are being bribed with state taxpayer money. That's the caveat that I think we have to be careful of that we don't run into. I suspect you're going to be seeing that out there, so be on the lookout for that. Some backroom deals and some shady stuff that's going to happen. You may find some people within your states that seem to be pretty upstanding people that now are going to be coasting and doing some pretty dirty things with taxpayer money because they're going to be bribed into doing these types of things. The other thing that I think we have to watch out for that you can especially expect to see is the areas that are still sensitive areas. And again, this is all kind of confirmed in this decision. Because they say that, let's say schools, for instance, schools, banks, jailhouses, places like that, since those places are still going to be restricted for you to conceal carry, look for them to put unreasonable amounts of space from those places that you're not allowed to carry. Look for them to say within 1,000 feet of a school, within 1,000 feet of a bank, within 1,000 feet of a police department. They're going to start putting some very unreasonable things in there. Now, granted, that's likely to get struck down later, but I think temporarily and for the time being, they're actually going to be able to get some of those things by and put those in place to make it harder and harder so that if a person does not know exactly how far away they are from, say, a school, for instance, they may be a block over from a school and not know there's a school in the next block over and walk down this one street, get popped, and go to jail for having it concealed carry in a, quote, school zone in a sensitive area. So very important to watch out for that kind of stuff. I think we have to, look, not to pat myself on the back, there's plenty of other channels like mine out there that give pretty good information on this type of stuff, and they stay very up to date on it. Arm Scholar, for one, a good friend out in California. I know he's going to have his ear to the ground on this. And, of course, Jared, Guns and Gadgets, he's going to have his ear real close to the ground on this. So those guys are really good resources. I'm going to try to stay up on it as best I can as well. So we're going to try to disseminate information as best we can to make sure you guys have the right information, because God knows we don't want any of our friends out there to get into any kind of trouble. Now, How does this impact those of us who are in states who do not have that type of may issue, where we already have a shall issue, where anybody who applies for it and doesn't have a criminal background or whatever can get one? Okay, the one way it probably affects us is that now we're a little bit safer going forward from our own state governments being able to impose any kind of anti-gun registration limits or requirements or anything like that, to where we have to do crazy stuff in order to be able to carry a firearm. You know, some of these states that may normally be red turning purple and eventually could turn blue, you could see governors and state reps and things like that passing local state laws that might get to a point where it restricts you from being able to do that. Well, now those things are off the table. So you're safe. You're safe for the future because of this ruling. Now no one can enact those types of laws anymore. Interestingly enough, the state of New Jersey already has something that came out that you can just tell the person who typed this was so mad behind the keyboard. You can feel the rage behind the keyboard from this snowflake right here. But they're putting information out there right now that's basically telling their citizens that don't get too froggy. Essentially, there have been some changes in the law that have been made. We will be coming out with some additional laws. They're pretty much warning that they're going to have some additional laws, like I just discussed, that are going to make it harder for their citizens to carry a firearm. Kind of warning them that if you are, still carrying a firearm, or if you start to carry a firearm on the street in areas that were restricted and states that were restricted before, you're probably going to get arrested and be in trouble. So look for some very interesting and creative laws to come out of all of this, because I do believe people are going to get creative. They're going to go behind closed doors and they're going to look at each other and go, how can we circumvent this? So just watch out for all of that, guys. It's on the way. It's going to be coming.
Let's go, Brandon.